What if I told you that Cinderella wasn't just a fairy tale? That behind the glass slippers and pumpkin carriages lies a true story so scandalous, so heartbreaking, that Disney buried it for decades? A story of a real princess forced into servitude by her own family who defied an empire to claim her destiny. This is the story they never wanted you to hear. The story of how one woman's courage created the legend we all know, but with a truth far more powerful than any magic spell. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what's your favorite Cinderella moment. Your support helps us uncover the hidden stories behind the legends. Now, let's step back in time to 1920s Europe, where our story truly begins. Her real name was Catherine Alexandra, but everyone called her Cat. Born in 1903 to a minor branch of European nobility, a family whose titles meant more than their wealth, she grew up in a crumbling estate on the outskirts of Vienna, Austria. The grand halls echoed with memories of better days, when her grandfather had been a confidant of emperors. Now the wallpaper peeled, the gardens grew wild, and her family clung desperately to the illusion of grandeur. Cat's mother died when she was only 7, giving birth to a stillborn son that would have secured the family's future. Her father, Count Wilhelm, was a broken man, kind but weak, drowning his sorrows in expensive brandy the family could no longer afford. Within a year, desperate for stability and someone to manage his household, he remarried. Baroness Margaretha von Steinberg arrived with 2 daughters from her first marriage. Ingrid, 17, and beautiful in a cold, calculated way, and Helena, 15, and cruel behind a sweet smile. They brought trunks of expensive clothes, jewelry that sparkled with borrowed money, and an ambition that would destroy everything Cat held dear. At first, Margaretha played the loving stepmother. She stroked Cat's hair and called her "my little dove." But Cat noticed things. The way Margaretha's eyes hardened when her father praised Cat's intelligence. How her stepsisters would accidentally ruin Cat's clothes. The whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Everything changed the night of Cat's 16th birthday. Her father had planned a small celebration, just family and a few close friends. Cat had spent days helping the cook prepare his favorite dishes, hoping to see him smile again. She wore her mother's pearls, the only valuable thing she owned, a connection to the woman she barely remembered. The dinner was pleasant enough. Her father seemed almost happy, telling old stories about her mother. But then Margaretha stood, tapping her wineglass for attention. "Wilhelm, darling, I've been thinking about Catherine's future," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "She's 16 now, a woman. She should be thinking about marriage, about securing her position." Cat's father nodded, oblivious to the trap being set. "I've taken the liberty of speaking with Baron Hoffmann. He's agreed that Catherine would make an excellent match for his son Friedrich." Cat's blood ran cold. Friedrich Hoffmann was 43 years old, twice widowed, known for his temper and his debts. The thought of marrying him made her stomach turn. "Father, no!" she began. "It's an excellent match," Margaretha continued, speaking over her. "The Hoffmanns still have considerable wealth. This marriage would save our family." "Save the family?" Cat's voice shook. "Or save you from your own debts?" Margaretha's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the ice beneath. "Don't be dramatic, Catherine. You'll marry Baron Hoffmann's son in the spring. It's already arranged." Cat looked at her father, begging him with her eyes to intervene, but Wilhelm just stared at his wineglass, unable to meet his gaze. In that moment, she understood. He was too weak to protect her. She was alone. That night, Cat made a decision. She would run away. She had an aunt in Paris, her mother's sister, who had always sent warm letters. She would go there, start over, become someone new. But fate had other plans. 3 weeks later, her father went riding, something he hadn't done in years. Perhaps he was trying to recapture happier times. Perhaps he was running from his own cowardice. The horse spooked at a snake in the path. Count Wilhelm was thrown, his neck broken instantly. At the funeral, Cat stood alone as they lowered her father into the ground. Margaretha and her daughters wore black silk and wept dramatically for the mourners. But Cat saw the truth in her stepmother's eyes: relief. After the funeral, the lawyer read the will. Everything, the estate, the remaining money, the title, went to Margaretha as his widow, with the understanding that Cat would be cared for as befitting her station. Those words would become her prison. Within a month, everything changed. Margarita fired most of the staff, claiming poverty. The few who remained were loyal to her, not to Cat. The wedding to Friedrich Hoffmann was quietly cancelled. Margarita had found a better match for Ingrid. One morning, Cat came down to breakfast to find her place at the table gone. "We need to discuss your position in this household," Margarita said, not looking up from her coffee. "You're not a child anymore, Catherine, and this family cannot afford passengers." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you'll earn your keep. The maids have too much work. You'll help them, starting today." Cat laughed, thinking it was a cruel joke, but Margarita's face remained cold. "You can't be serious. I'm my father's daughter." "Your father is dead," Margarita snapped, "and he left you nothing. No dowry, no inheritance, nothing. You exist in this house by my grace alone. So you'll work or you leave. Your choice." Cat thought of her aunt in Paris, but she had no money for travel, no way to contact her, and Margarita knew it. "Where will I sleep?" Cat asked quietly, her spirit already breaking. "The servants' quarters, the small room by the kitchen. It's more than adequate." That night, Cat moved her few possessions, the clothes Margarita hadn't already given to her daughters, her mother's pearls, which she hid carefully, and a photograph of her parents on their wedding day, into a tiny room that smelled of onions and old stone. She lay on the narrow bed and cried until she had no tears left. The princess had become a servant in her own home. But this was only the beginning of her transformation. What Cat didn't know was that this descent into servitude would lead her to a ball, a prince, and a night that would change everything. But first, she would have to survive 3 years of cruelty that would either break her or forge her into something unbreakable. They started calling her Cinders after the first month. Cat's days began before dawn. She woke in her cold little room, dressed in the plain gray dress that had become her uniform, and descended to the kitchen to start the fires. Her hands, once soft and unmarked, became calloused and scarred from the work. Ash settled into the creases of her skin, under her fingernails, in her hair. No matter how much she scrubbed, she always smelled faintly of smoke. "Cinders," Ingrid would call from upstairs, "my breakfast is cold. How am I supposed to eat cold eggs?" "Cinders," Helena would shriek, "you've ruined my dress. Look at this stain. You're useless." The names they called her were designed to strip away her identity. Not Catherine, not Cat, Cinders. A thing, a servant, nothing more. But the physical work wasn't the worst part. It was the erasure of who she'd been. Margaret removed every portrait of Cat and her mother from the walls. Her father's study was locked, its contents sold piece by piece. The library where Cat had spent hours reading was forbidden to her. When old friends of the family came to visit, Cat was ordered to stay in the kitchen. If she encountered them, she was to lower her eyes and say nothing. "No one can know you're still here," Margaret told her coldly. "It would raise too many questions. As far as society is concerned, you've gone to live with relatives abroad, and that's exactly what you'll tell anyone who asks." Cat became a ghost in her own home. She watched from the kitchen as her stepsisters wore dresses that had been purchased with money from her father's estate. She served them meals while her own stomach growled. She pressed their silk gowns while wearing rags. But something unexpected happened during those 3 years of servitude. Cat didn't break. She transformed. The turning point came one night in her 2nd year as a servant. She was in the kitchen, long after everyone had gone to bed, finally eating her own meager dinner. The cook, Mrs. Hoffman, no relation to the Baron, thankfully, had left out some bread and cheese, a small kindness. An elderly woman appeared at the kitchen door. She was bent with age, her clothes simple but clean, her eyes sharp despite her years. "Excuse me, dear," she said. "I've lost my way. Might I trouble you for some water?" Cat quickly poured a glass and offered the woman a seat by the still warm stove. "You're kind," the woman said, studying Cat's face. "Kindness is rare in grand houses." "This house isn't as grand as it appears," Cat said quietly. The old woman smiled. "No, I suppose not. Tell me, child, what's your name?" "They call me Cinders." "That's what they call you. I asked what your name is." Cat looked up, surprised. No one had asked her that in 2 years. "Catherine," she whispered. "My name is Catherine Alexandra." "A noble name. Your mother chose well." "You knew my mother?" "I knew of her. She was kind too, and brave. They say she chose your father for love, not position. Her family was furious." Cat had never known that story. "What happened?" "She married him anyway, gave up her inheritance, her family's approval, everything, because she believed love was worth more than gold." The old woman finished her water and stood. "Remember that, Catherine. They can take your home, your position, your comfort, but they cannot take who you are. Not unless you let them." The woman left before Cat could ask her name, but those words stayed with her. They cannot take who you are, not unless you let them. From that night on, Cat began to resist in small ways. She would hum her mother's favorite songs while scrubbing floors. She memorized poetry while beating rugs. She practiced her mother's elegant posture while carrying buckets of water. In the tiny mirror in her room, she would stand tall and remind herself, "I am Catherine Alexandra. I am my mother's daughter." She also began to observe. From the kitchen, she heard everything: Margaret's schemes, Ingrid's desperate attempts to catch a wealthy husband, Helena's cruelty masked as sweetness. She learned that her stepmother had massive gambling debts, that Ingrid had been rejected by 3 suitors in the past year, that Helena was having an affair with a married count. Knowledge, Cat realized, was power, and she was learning all their secrets. Mrs. Hoffman, the cook, became Cat's unlikely ally. The old woman had worked for Cat's grandparents and remembered better days. "Your mother would be proud of you," she told Cat one day. "You haven't let them break you." "Sometimes I feel broken," Cat admitted. "Broken things can be mended, and often they're stronger in the broken places." It was Mrs. Hoffman who brought news of the ball. "The prince is returning," she announced one morning, bustling into the kitchen with fresh bread. "He's been abroad for 5 years, studying. Now he's back, and the king is throwing a grand ball. Every eligible woman in the country is invited." The prince? Cat had vague memories of a serious boy a few years older than her, always surrounded by tutors and guards. Prince Alexander. They say he's become quite handsome, and he needs a wife. The invitations are going out to every noble family." Mrs. Hoffman paused. "That includes this house." Kat's heart sank. Ingrid and Helena would go, of course. They'd wear beautiful gowns and dance with the prince, and she would stay here, in the ashes, alone. But Mrs. Hoffman had a strange gleam in her eye. "Your mother saved my daughter once, did you know? She was ill, and your mother paid for the doctor, the medicine, everything. She saved her life." The old woman took Kat's hands. "I've been waiting 3 years to repay that debt, and I think I know how." "What do you mean?" "You're going to that ball, Catherine, and you're going to remind everyone who you really are." The plan Mrs. Hoffman proposed was dangerous, perhaps impossible, but it gave Kat something she hadn't felt in 3 years: hope. What she didn't know was that the prince had his own secrets, his own reasons for dreading the ball. And when they met, it wouldn't be magic that brought them together. It would be truth. The invitation arrived on thick cream paper sealed with the royal crest. Marguerite opened it at breakfast, her eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. "A ball," she breathed, "at the palace. The prince will choose his bride from among the attendees." She looked at her daughters. "This is our chance. Ingrid, you'll wear the blue silk. Helena, the rose gown. We'll spare no expense." "What about Cinders?" Helena asked with false innocence. "Doesn't she get to go?" The 3 of them laughed. Kat, serving their breakfast, kept her eyes down and said nothing. "The invitation says, 'All eligible ladies of noble birth,'" Ingrid smirked. "Cinders is hardly eligible, and certainly no lady." Kat retreated to the kitchen, their laughter following her. But Mrs. Hoffman was waiting, along with 2 other women Kat didn't recognize. "These are my sister and my daughter," Mrs. Hoffman said. "They're going to help us perform a miracle." Over the next 3 nights, while Marguerite and her daughters slept, the women worked in secret. Mrs. Hoffman's sister was a seamstress who once worked for the finest houses in Vienna. She took apart one of Kat's mother's old gowns, a beautiful dress of silver blue silk that had been hidden in the attic, and remade it to fit Kat's now slender frame. Mrs. Hoffman's daughter had married a jeweler. She brought paste diamonds that glittered like real ones, and they fashioned them into a delicate necklace. "Your mother's pearls would be recognized," Mrs. Hoffman explained. "These are fake, but they're beautiful. And beauty doesn't have to be real to be powerful." They taught Kat how to dress her hair in the current fashion, how to use rice powder to hide the roughness of her hands, and how to walk and speak as nobility after 3 years of servitude. "But how will I get there?" Kat asked. "And what will I tell Marguerite?" "Leave that to me," Mrs. Hoffman said mysteriously. The night of the ball arrived. Kat watched from the kitchen as her stepsisters preened and posed. Ingrid's blue dress was beautiful, but made her look cold. Helena's rose gown was lovely, but clashed with her complexion. Marguerite wore black, with too many jewels, a widow playing the martyr while clearly hunting for her next wealthy husband. Their carriage departed at 7. The house fell silent. Kat waited in the kitchen, her heart pounding. Had it all been a dream? Had Mrs. Hoffman's plan fallen through? Then she heard the sound of wheels on gravel. Mrs. Hoffman burst into the kitchen, grinning like a girl. "Your carriage awaits, my lady." It wasn't a pumpkin coach with mice-turned horses, but it was magical in its own way. Mrs. Hoffman's son-in-law owned a modest carriage service. He'd prepared his finest coach, pulled by 2 white horses, and dressed in livery that looked almost royal in the moonlight. The women helped Cat dress. The silk gown whispered against her skin like a memory. The paste diamonds caught the lamplight and threw rainbows across the walls. They pinned her hair up with pearl combs, fake but elegant, and when they finally let her see herself in the mirror, Cat gasped. She looked like her mother. She looked like a princess again. "You must leave before midnight," Mrs. Hoffman warned. "That's when Marguerite and her daughters will depart. You cannot risk them seeing you in the carriage or recognizing you." "I understand." "And Catherine," the old woman took her hands, "be yourself. That's the most powerful magic there is." The palace blazed with 1,000 candles. Music floated from the ballroom windows. Cat's carriage joined the line of vehicles depositing elegantly dressed guests at the grand entrance. When it was her turn, a footman helped her down. She climbed the marble steps on trembling legs, presented her invitation, which Mrs. Hoffman had cleverly stolen and copied, and stepped into a world she thought she'd lost forever. The ballroom was magnificent, all gold and crystal and mirrors that reflected the candlelight into a galaxy of stars. Hundreds of people in their finest clothes danced and laughed and schemed. Cat felt overwhelmed, invisible, out of place. And then she saw him. Prince Alexander stood on a raised platform, surrounded by courtiers and admirers. He was tall, with dark hair and serious eyes that seemed tired despite his youth. He couldn't have been more than 25. He wore the formal military uniform of the royal family, medals gleaming on his chest. But he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. As Cat watched, young women were presented to him one after another. Each curtsied deeply, each smiled their brightest smile, each tried desperately to catch his attention, and each received the same polite, distant nod before he turned to the next. He looked miserable. Without thinking, Cat laughed, not loudly, but enough. The prince's head turned. Their eyes met across the crowded ballroom. For a moment, everything else disappeared. He smiled, not the polite smile he'd been giving the others, but a real smile, surprised, curious, human. And then he did something that made the entire ballroom gasp. He stepped down from the platform and walked toward her, ignoring the line of women waiting to be presented. "You laughed," he said when he reached her. "Why?" Cat knew she should curtsy, should stammer something appropriate. Instead, she told the truth. "Because you look like a prisoner at your own ball, Your Highness, and I understand how that feels." His eyes widened. Then he laughed, a real, genuine laugh that seemed to surprise even him. "I'm Alexander," he said, offering his hand. "And you are?" Cat hesitated. If she gave her real name, Margaret would hear about it. The truth would come out. Everything would be ruined. But Mrs. Hoffman's words echoed in her mind. "Be yourself. That's the most powerful magic there is." "Catherine," she said, placing her hand in his. "My name is Catherine Alexandra." The prince led her to the dance floor, and as they waltzed beneath the chandeliers, neither knew they were setting in motion events that would topple a carefully built house of lies. But first, Cat would have to face her greatest fear and make a choice that would determine not just her future, but who she would become. They danced for 3 dances straight, an eternity in palace protocol, a scandal that had tongues wagging within minutes. But neither Cat nor Alexander noticed. They were too busy talking. "Do you always say exactly what you're thinking?" Alexander asked as they waltzed. "No," Cat admitted. "For 3 years, I've said almost nothing at all. Tonight feels like being able to breathe again." 3 years? His brow furrowed. What happened 3 years ago? Cat wanted to tell him everything, but fear held her tongue. He was a prince. She was a servant, pretending to be what she once was. The gap between them was unbridgeable. "I lost someone," she said carefully, "and everything changed." "I understand loss," Alexander said quietly. "My mother died when I was abroad. I never got to say goodbye. My father sent me away to study, to become a proper prince, but I think he really just wanted me out of the way while he grieved. Now he wants me to marry, to produce heirs, to do my duty. As if I'm not a person, just a role to be filled." "And what do you want?" Cat asked him. No one had ever asked him that before. She saw it in his face. "I want to know I'm choosing my own life, not having it chosen for me." "Then choose," Cat said. "Right now, in this moment, choose." He looked at her, really looked at her, and Cat felt seen for the first time in years. "Would you walk with me, away from all these eyes?" She should have said no, should have remembered the time, remembered that she needed to leave before midnight, but she nodded. Alexander led her through a side door, down a corridor, and out into the palace gardens. The night air was cool and smelled of roses. The music from the ballroom was distant now, dreamlike. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached a fountain, its water glittering under the moon. "Tell me something true, one true thing about yourself that you've never told anyone." Cat thought about all her secrets, all her pain, and then she did something brave. "I'm a fraud. I'm wearing a borrowed dress, fake jewels, and pretending to be someone I'm not anymore. I used to be a lady, now I'm a servant. But tonight, for a few hours, I'm remembering who I was and discovering who I might become." She waited for shock, disgust, rejection. Instead, Alexander started to laugh. "A fraud? Catherine, I'm the prince of a failing kingdom. We're almost bankrupt. This ball, this spectacle, it's all to find me a rich wife who can save us from economic collapse. I'm not choosing a bride tonight. I'm choosing a business arrangement. So if you're a fraud, then so am I." Cat sat beside him. "We're a pair, aren't we? Perhaps that's why I feel like I can breathe around you too." They sat in silence, two people who had forgotten how to be real, remembering together. "I should go," Cat said reluctantly. "It's almost midnight." "Why midnight?" "Because that's when my borrowed magic runs out, and I turn back into myself." "And who is that?" "I don't know anymore, but I'd like to find out." Alexander stood and offered his hand. "Before you go, tell me how to find you again, please." Cat thought of her little room by the kitchen, of the ash in her hair and the calluses on her hands. How could she tell him that? "If you want to find me," she said carefully, "look for someone who's not where she belongs, someone who's been forgotten, but someone who hasn't forgotten herself." She kissed his cheek, a brief, gentle kiss, and then she ran. She made it to the carriage with minutes to spare. As it pulled away, Cat looked back at the palace, glowing like a jewel against the night sky. She'd gone from Cinders to Catherine and back again in one night, but something had changed inside her. She'd remembered who she was, and she'd realized something crucial. She could become someone new. The next morning, Cat woke to screaming. Margaretha burst into her room, her face purple with rage. "You!" she shrieked. "You were at the ball!" Cat's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you—" "Don't lie to me. Someone described you perfectly. The prince danced with a mysterious woman named Catherine Alexandra. Your name, your mother's name. You went to that ball and you humiliated this family." "I humiliated you?" Cat stood up, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't cower. "You've humiliated me every day for 3 years. You stole my home, my name, my life. I went to one ball, one night of being myself, and you can't stand it because for once I was happier than your daughters?" Margaretha's hand flew toward Cat's face, but Cat caught her wrist. "Don't
ever touch me again." They stood frozen, both shocked by Cat's strength. "The prince is searching for the woman he danced with," she said, her voice venomous. "He's visiting every noble house. When he comes here, you will not see him, you will not speak to him. You will stay in your room, or I will make your life a living hell." "More of a hell than it already is? Try me." 2 days later, a royal carriage arrived. Cat was locked in her room. Margaretha had installed a bolt on the outside, but she could hear everything. "Your Highness," Margaretha gushed, "what an honor! These are my daughters Ingrid and Helena." Cat pressed her ear against the door. She heard Alexandra's voice, polite but distant. "I'm looking for someone, a woman named Catherine Alexandra. I was told noble families named Alexandra once lived in this region." "Alexandra? Oh yes, that was my late husband's family name, but I'm afraid there's no Catherine here, just my daughters." "I see. May I look around?" "Of course, though I assure you it's just us." Cat heard footsteps climbing stairs, doors opening and closing. She pounded on her door. "Hello? Is someone there?" Alexandra's voice just outside. "Your Highness, that's just a storage room," Margaretha lied. "Nothing of interest." "It sounds like someone inside. Rats, I'm afraid. Old houses, you know." She heard him being led away. Despair washed over her. She'd been so close. But then she remembered. She still had her mother's pearls, the real ones, hidden in a loose board under her bed. She pulled them out and looked at them in the dim light filtering through her tiny window. Her mother had chosen love over position. Her mother had been brave. Cat could be brave too. She opened her window. It was a long drop to the garden below, but there was a trellis with strong ivy. She'd climbed it as a child. She could climb it now.
Cat made it to the ground just as the royal carriage was pulling away. She ran after it, barefoot, still in her servant's dress, her hair wild. "Wait!" she screamed. "Wait!" The carriage stopped. Alexander leaned out the window, his eyes widening. "Catherine?" She ran to him, breathless. Guards moved to intercept her, but Alexander waved them off. "It's me," she said. "I'm the one you're looking for, but I'm also the girl locked in the attic. I'm Catherine Alexandra, daughter of Count Wilhelm. This is my family home, and that woman has stolen everything from me." She held out the pearls. "These were my mother's, real pearls, not paste. They have our family crest engraved on the clasp. Check your records. My mother was Lady Maria Alexandra before she married my father. These pearls were her grandmother's." Alexander took the pearls carefully. He examined the clasp, and Cat saw recognition dawn in his eyes. "I know these," he said softly. "My mother had a portrait painted with your mother when they were girls, best friends. She wore these pearls in that painting." Marguerite came running out of the house, Ingrid and Helena behind her. "Your Highness, don't listen to her. She's disturbed, mentally unwell. She makes up stories." "Enough," Alexander's voice cracked like a whip. "I want the truth, now." It all came out. Cat told him everything. Her father's death, the stolen inheritance, 3 years as a servant in her own home. Mrs. Hoffman appeared confirming every word. Other servants, loyal to Cat's father, came forward with their own stories. Marguerite's schemes unraveled in the afternoon sunlight. Her gambling debts, the money she'd stolen from the estate. Even her daughters' reputations were destroyed when their own cruelty and scandals came to light. By evening, Marguerite and her daughters were gone, fleeing before authorities could arrive. The house was returned to its rightful owner. The cat didn't feel victorious. She felt exhausted. She sat on the front steps of her home, barely believing it was hers again. Alexander sat beside her. "What will you do now?" he asked. "I don't know," Cat said honestly. 3 years ago, I was a girl who needed to be saved. Then I was a servant who learned to survive. Tonight, I'm a woman who saved herself, but I don't know who that woman is yet. I'd like to help you find out, if you'll let me. You need a rich wife to save your kingdom. I can offer you nothing but a rundown estate and a complicated past. You can offer me truth. You can offer me someone who understands what it's like to lose everything and still find the courage to be themselves. That's worth more than any dowry." Cat looked at him. "Are you proposing?" "Not yet," he smiled. "I'm proposing we get to know each other, really know each other. No balls, no pretense, just two people trying to choose their own lives." "I'd like that," Cat said.
The story of Catherine Alexandra didn't end with a wedding and happily ever after, at least not right away. She and Alexander courted for 2 years. She rebuilt her estate, using the rents to establish schools for poor children. He reformed his kingdom's economy, proving a wise leader didn't need a rich wife, just good ideas. When they finally married, it was in a small ceremony in the garden where they'd first shared the truth. Cat wore her mother's pearls. Alexander wore a simple suit, not his royal uniform. Their story became legend, though twisted in the retelling. The ash and cinders became a fairy godmother's magic. The real pearls became glass slippers. The courageous choice to save herself became waiting to be rescued. But those who knew the true story, Mrs. Hoffman and her family, the servants who'd remain loyal, and eventually Cat and Alexander's own children, knew better. The real magic wasn't in transformation spells or pumpkin coaches. It was in remembering who you are when everyone tries to make you forget. It was in choosing yourself when no one else will choose you. It was in finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and loves you anyway. Catherine Alexandra hadn't needed a fairy godmother. She'd needed courage, allies, and the strength to run toward her destiny instead of waiting for it to find her. That's the story Disney never wanted you to know. Because it's not a story about magic saving you, it's about saving yourself. And that's the most powerful magic of all. Did this true story change how you see Cinderella forever? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more hidden histories behind your favorite fairy tales. Remember, you don't need magic to change your story. You just need courage. And sometimes, a good pair of running shoes works better than glass slippers anyway.